know, man, you ever just feel like life is just pushing us towards something, like some greater purpose?
Hi folks, I'm Ignatiy Vishnevetsky.
And I'm Alex Dowd.
Today we're talking about the 1517 to Paris. It's the new film by Clint Eastwood.
Welcome to a new season of Film Club.
So the good news is that Clint Eastwood at 87 years old has made one of the oddest films of his career. The bad news is that it is odd in all the wrong, bad ways. Calling it a drama would be
very generous.
Would be very generous.
Yeah.
This is his film about the 2015 attack on a train from Amsterdam to Paris. A man came out armed with an assault rifle and a pistol and was subdued by the passengers, including 3 vacationing Americans.
Yes.
2 of whom were servicemen.
The movie's sort of stunt, if you will, or its experiment, is that the 3 Americans have been played by themselves.
And as are some of the other passengers,
Yes.
including the 4th man, who's not a character, who did help them, and also
Yes.
was also commended for
Really
his bravery.
does not get any due in this film.
Really does
at
not
all.
get his due here.
Yeah.
This has a similar problem, you would say, from a conceptual standpoint to Sully, which is that you have this momentary act of bravery, but what's the actual story? Now, Sully, which I think is one of my favorite of his recent films, does very interesting things picking apart its central event.
And structurally as well. I mean, Sully sort of takes that moment, and the fact that that particular few seconds were so critical becomes part of the movie's architecture, returning constantly to that time and saying, you know, what do you do in this moment of crisis? And this film has a very similar sort of pivot moment.
Yeah.
It's basically asking, you know, what do you do in this moment where you have to act very fast and sort of not think? The problem is that this film, unlike Sully, just sort of feels like 90 minutes of padding until we get to the big thing that happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's the leads are non-professionals, and you can tell because they can't act.
They're very non-professional.
Only one of them can sort of act.
Yeah.
And
I don't even know if he can act so much as he has a little bit more screen presence than the other 2.
yeah, the script is a shapeless mess. Some of the most mortifyingly bad moments in Eastwood's late period filmography are in this film.
It's one of the clumsiest films he's ever made, I think, on a scene-by-scene basis, at least. You know, and the structure is we meet them as kids, and the child actors are bad too, by the way.
Yeah. Possibly worse than the
I mean,
grown-up
at
swan
least there's
actors
some
at all.
continuity there. They're like, well, we really believe these are the same characters because they're also bad at acting.
Yeah.
We get to the middle of the movie, which is them basically in basic training.
Well, the 2 that go, and then the 3rd one who isn't just disappears from the narrative.
Right, until he's needed again. Yeah. And the sort of third portion of the film is them vacationing through Europe, sort of aimlessly until they get on the train. And you and I had identical thoughts that we did not share until this morning, but this movie plays a lot like a bootleg Richard Linklater film.
Yeah, and it's Eastwood and Linklater, it's 2 great tastes that apparently just taste like garbage together.
Yeah.
Because they're so different in their outlook, so different in their I think approaches to filmmaking.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have moments that do feel very Linklater-esque,
Right.
especially when they're in Europe.
But what if hanging out with these people was just really boring? Is
Yeah.
the question, you know? What if Linklater made a movie where his actors weren't very good, and that sort of laid-back quality was just kind of tedious?
Eastwood is someone who's famous for not doing a lot of takes. If the first take is in focus, it's good, you move on. And I think his style can be hell on actors, and you sometimes get very bad performances from good actors, and people without an acting background are, I feel,
Well, they're stranded.
Yeah.
They're stranded. I mean, I think about the kids in Gran Torino. There's a little bit of charisma there, but they need help. You know, they've never done this before, and Eastwood isn't going to provide that.
Yeah. You know, some of the moments here make the kids in Gran Torino look like Clint Eastwood in Clint Eastwood. It makes them look like Clint
agree.
Eastwood in Gran Torino, you know?
Yeah.
But the actual train attack sequence is quite good.
Yes, the train attack sequence is superb, I think. And I actually got a little choked up watching that because I think that's the one moment in the film where the conflation of reality and fictional filmmaking really comes together, where you actually are seeing the people who really did this You're seeing them in action, reenacting this thing that they really did, and how matter-of-fact it is, I think, really works in its favor.
In almost a morbid way, because the guy, one of the passengers got shot, and he plays himself, like basically bleeding from the neck on the ground, which is...
That's such a traumatic thing to do to a person, you know?
Yeah.
Come relive the worst moment of your life on screen, thank you. Yeah, but I think that moment really works, and I think it's when Clint Eastwood's sort of no bullshit, nuts and bolts filmmaking style really comes together for the film.
But outside of this stunt, what's really the idea behind this film? I mean, what's the idea behind this narrative? There's a germ of something, which is this idea that you kind of get, especially in the middle part, that's a little bit more focused on their experiences in the military, that these guys they're not great at what they do. They're mediocre.
Yeah.
One of them flunks out of one thing after another. There's a whole episode where one of them forgets his pack, and they have to like go back in their Humvee to a village to get their translator to negotiate with the villagers to get his backpack back. They're bumbling and kind of ordinary, and I understand that idea, at least in theory, that because so many of Eastwood's films interrogate heroism, mind you, in much more interesting ways. But this idea that you don't have to be the greatest hero in the world. All that matters is that you do the thing at the moment when it counts.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but I think in a lot of ways, I also think this movie is kind of the film that people were complaining about with American Sniper.
Yeah.
Which Sniper, the sort of case against that movie was that it was this really jingoistic, rah-rah American, badass recruitment video sort of. And but the honest truth about that film is that it's more complicated than that. It gets into the amount of trauma that going to war causes for Americans. And I don't think a movie that says that war will fuck you up as much as American Sniper does can really fit that conservative model that people were putting it into.
Yeah, I mean, there are other things you can knock it for, which is, among other things, not, say, dealing with Chris Kyle's lying, basically.
Of course. This is a movie that I think presents the narrative that the military will help you make something of yourself.